I don't like this thing in Resident Evil Village, and if I can't unsee it, then I'm about to make it everyone else's problem. Also, a very quick spoiler warning before we get into it, because all of the footage I use for this video will be from New Game Plus, and I will be using endgame weapons. You've been warned, and if that somehow is going to ruin a years-old game for you, then, well, rip my audience retention, I guess. I called attention to the fact that this game has issues with continuity errors in my first ever review on the channel, and those stem from one key source. Cutscenes are made to play out in one very specific way, and only in that one very specific way. No matter where you are in relation to what happens in the cutscene, or what you were doing in relation to the cutscene, the game will always ensure, by any means necessary, that you are where the game wants you to be, no matter what. No matter if this implies that regular enemies are massively stronger than the actual bosses, or if there's a building in the way, or if you have to spawn an enemy out of absolutely nowhere, or a boss has to come back to life, or if you can literally see that Ethan just teleported and confirm it on the map. And by the way, all of this continuity-shattering nonsense happens in the first 15 minutes of the game, in the very first 2 fights of the game. So unfortunately, these are kind of meant to set the tone, and sad to say, it doesn't go very well. So let's break these down, starting with the very first house that you ever have to go into, the house before the tutorial. Alright, so you finish the intro segment, go into the cutscenes, do the mandatory walking simulator, and now you're here, outside the first required house in the game. You go in, you meet the farmer with the shotgun, strongest character in Dragon Ball history before he got power crept by all these lichens. You're given the starting pistol, and you have to fight your first enemy outside. So far, so understandable, until you look at the details and realize that everything is actually broken. First, I'll show you a bunch of landmarks to give you context on what we're looking at, and as things play out, you'll see what goes wrong. I want you to remember specifically this rope and this stepladder, and real quick, here is where we are on the map, here is where we're going to be pulled into the floor during the first cutscene at the head of the table, and here is the kitchen wall that we will be thrown through at the end of the second cutscene. First, I'm going to interact with the curtain, and the farmer is going to miss me point blank with a shotgun on a target that was showing his full body and standing perfectly not important. Then the lichens attack, you're given the pistol, and he gets pulled into the ceiling and somehow doesn't drop his gun for us. Moments later, you're pulled through the floor right here at the head of the table, leaving a big hole in the floor. Except you're not, and there isn't. Because once you're in control again, you'll be able to look up through the hole, and allowing you to do this was a huge mistake. Because when you do, you'll notice there's the rope, and there's that stepladder. It's almost as if you're suddenly in an entirely different part of the house than where you were pulled into, and the map even shows you that. But wait, it gets worse. Once you wander just a little bit closer to the entrance of the house, meaning away from the kitchen, you get jumped, lose part of your hand, and get yoked through both the floor and the wall I showed earlier. Meaning, not only should there now be another hole in the floor, but potentially through multiple walls as well that were in your way considering we were in the other hallway. Kill the tutorial lichen, and oh, would you look at that? No hole in the floor at the head of the table at all. No second hole in any of the floors or walls anywhere in the kitchen, and if you decide to go and have a look, you can even see the hole they made when they teleported you into the hallway. They don't even properly block it off, and by the way, when you're in the hole, it isn't even blocked off. Now, they just arbitrarily prevent you from walking back there again to try and cover their tracks. Oh, but dear player, do not worry, for this is only the first house, and we've got an entire section of the village for you to fight through next. We've got to establish tone. This isn't your campy action movie Resident Evil. Oh no, we've grown since Resident Evil 5 and 6. This is post RE7. This is a serious game with serious, understandable personal stakes. This is a game that wants you to be afraid. And you know what's really frightening? Making a random early game enemy that spawns behind you without warning and is actually stronger than any of the game's bosses, who throws you so hard in the wrong direction that you fly through a building about the distance of a city block and you never see him again. But we promise he's secretly there in the background, always watching. You make your way into the second house, you get the tutorial and interactable elements in the environment, and then get attacked by multiple Lycans. Kill them, make your way out, and you'll find yourself surrounded. Now, here's what's going to happen next. You're going to fight either until you've survived long enough or you've killed every enemy that can spawn, and then another enemy is going to spawn behind you and grab you. You're going to get hit in the face, and then you're going to be thrown to where you're supposed to be for this cutscene, which is right here. You land in this very specific spot in the river, at the base of this incline, facing upwards toward the house. This happens no matter where you are, so I am going to intentionally position myself as far away as possible with as much in the way as possible. Also, just to really send it home, I'm gonna make sure we kill Uriash in the meantime, and you'll see why that becomes a problem too. Any of my Eastern European friends, let me know in the comments if I pronounced that right. It's supposed to be Romanian for giant or huge. I'm trying, alright? And if it's wrong, I'm sorry in advance for saying it that way the rest of the video. Okay, so now, many things are dead. We killed Uriash, and you can loot him. There is stuff on the ground underneath him, you'll see that in a minute, and oh, here we go! We land in the river looking up at the house, and oh, would you look at that? Uriash is alive! Crazy! So, provided that you haven't played this game to the obsessive degree that I have for content and unlocked infinite ammo for all the strongest guns, you just burn through all of your resources to down an optional boss for a ton of lay that you can't even use yet, and you'll have to kill him again later! But forget about him, the real powerhouse is that one random Lycan who managed to throw you all the way here with one arm from all the way over here. Through a house. That's just impressive. Oh, and he throws you forward, too, from where you're facing, which means you actually ricocheted off of those trees or something, then through the house, and then into the river. Eat your heart out, Umbrella. These Lycans that are considered the failed specimens are stronger than Mr. X and Nemesis. This random farming village cult in the middle of BFN Romania has a small army that could easily topple nations, and they're the weakest thing here, allegedly. Oh, and naturally then we wrap up our destroyed hand with the medical gauze that we definitely always had on us for some reason, which also somehow deals with and removes the remains of our two half-severed fingers. The whole game is full of things like these, and so we get a case study on why attention to detail in games is so important. These are the first two genuine encounters with enemies in the entire game, and the mob fight is essentially meant to be the capstone of the tutorial. It's a generally well-designed encounter in terms of fulfilling its purposes. First, you learn to melee, then you learn to shoot, then you learn to look around for important items, then you learn to interact with pursuit breakers, and then you're thrown into a large-scale arena where you're tested on and rewarded for using each of those in kind. Unfortunately, it's also so broken that I never noticed any of it the first time that I played it, because I'll remind you one last time, all of this non-existent internal logic happens in the first 15 minutes at the peaks of both tutorial areas and sets the baseline of what to expect for the entire rest of the game, which, by the way, is a game that can be beaten in less than 3 hours without glitches. It's incredibly fortunate that this game has so much to love and is so much fun in spite of its flaws, because holy crap, them's some flaws. Also, for those of you that have watched me long enough to remember when I reviewed RE8, you might be wondering what I meant when I said that I played this game obsessively for content, considering I only ever made the one video. I beat this game on every difficulty, and I've beaten it 7 times. I not only planned to make this video all the way back in my first year on YouTube, but multiple others as well, including a dashing dad run on Village of Shadows difficulty. Unfortunately, almost all of that has gone entirely to waste because that was all on my last computer, and all of the footage is crispy even at 720p. I still have all of it, but none of it is really usable. So I hope that helps you all understand why, even after all this time, this game has a very special place in my heart. But with all that being said, I've been LoneWolfEX, you've been awesome, and I will see you, yes, you, next time.